Shields up. It's time for Science! Sci-Friday on SkyWatchTV. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining us in studio, as always, my best friend, my wife, and our science editor, Sharon Gilbert, and a new addition to the SkyWatch team, and we are just thrilled that he made it here safely. Got here just ahead of the ice storm that hit the Ozarks earlier this week. Josh Peck. Josh, it's great to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here. It's an absolute pleasure and honor for me, and I don't think it's fully sunk in yet, but Christina and I are just thrilled. So thank you so much.
Well, as soon as we start you working and, shoveling out the parking lot out front.
Hey, I'll do it.
That's right. They didn't tell you that's the new guy.
Oh, yeah. Lots of things.
Tom might have missed that in the job description.
You have to clean the windows at our house.
Right. It's understandable.
Yeah. Well, Josh, you've written a couple of books that we just found absolutely intriguing, and you're working on another one. And that's why we're so happy to bring you in on these Sci-Friday broadcasts. Quantum Creation, Cherubim Chariots, which was mind-blowing, and the new forthcoming book. Can we even disclose that yet, or to just hint at it? Or,
yeah, absolutely. It's not titled yet. I have a working title, but it's probably not gonna stay that. But yeah, it's all about CERN, the LHC. It's explaining the science behind it to where anybody can understand it, and how it might fit in prophetically.
The science background that you bring to these books, when I first became aware of you through the internet, I thought, okay, well, this is just some young guy trying to attract attention to himself. And I was really wrong about that, because when I started reading the books, and it was like, whoa, not that I'm a scientist, but it was clear that you understood the science, and that you were also in this, and take this as high praise, in the spirit of Chuck Missler, able to relate it to a biblical worldview, which is so important today, and that's why we do these sci-fi broadcasts.
Well, amen to that, and I'm so glad you're here, because honestly, he and I sometimes will refer to things in physics, and I always just say, look, I can tell you what I think this article meant, but that wasn't my best subject in college. So,
freshman physics is where I hit the wall.
They've still got a splat, spot in the room where I took that. So yeah.
Well, they have one for me too, because in high school I didn't do so well in those areas either. But a lot of it, I think, what I found out is quantum physics for a while actually scared me, because I thought you got to be a genius to understand this stuff. How am I going to? But really, what it is, it's almost just learning a new language. Scientists, physicists especially, they speak to the public in this way. Basically, they use big words, but that's like a more dumbed down way of saying it. But once you know the language and kind of get a handle on that, you can then translate it back. So that's what I try to do in my book. So I'm not a scientist either. I don't have any formal training in this or anything. I'm just a private researcher that has a deep passion for this stuff.
You know what's so cool about that, though? It tells our viewers that they can comprehend this stuff too.
Yeah, if I can, anybody can.
I say that about the Bible, because Derek and I do a Bible study on the weekends, and we often say, look, we're using the same tools that you can access online. And in many ways, it's that way with science. If you just read some articles, read your books, then you'll be able to understand it. Okay, what's going on this week that we're going to talk about?
Well, there was one thing that I thought was really intriguing. I actually had two things, but neither one of those really a wow for people who've been watching our program, this program, for any length of time. But I want to bring this up again just to re-emphasize the point. Tom Horn will often get criticized for being an alarmist or sensationalist for talking about, or Russ Dizdar, who's been talking about the creation of super soldiers for quite a long time. DARPA has announced a new program called the Neural Engineering System Design that wants to develop a chip that will convert brainwaves into binary code so that you can directly interface the human brain with the computer processor, talk directly to the computer system. Now, we talked about Annie Jacobson's book, DARPA, or The Pentagon's Brain, which is the history of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. If you've not read that yet,
you have to.
Oh,
yeah, I haven't
good.
had a chance yet.
And she talks about the initiative that's initiatives within DARPA to research the human brain for soldiers who've suffered head injuries. And that's a good thing, because if they can restore some function to soldiers who have lost it in the service of the country, I think that's a noble goal.
Yeah.
But she makes a really good point in that book, and that's the question I want to ask, is if the Pentagon is developing a way for the brain to interface directly with the computer, because of DARPA's mission, you have to ask, how can it be weaponized?
Right.
Super soldier.
Right. Well, and also, could it go the other way? Could the computer interface with the brain? And if so, what does that say about free will and all the things that the government might take certain liberties with? I think this is like with a lot of different technologies. It all depends on who's wielding it. There's good things that can be achieved, but there's also some really nasty things too.
Right.
It's really terrifying when you take a look at the BRAIN initiative and the BRAIN program that's going over in Europe. I can't remember the name of it right now, but essentially that's the big frontier right
Yes.
now. We did the genetics, we figured out the human genome, or at least that's what we're told, and now we're trying to figure out, scientists are trying to figure out exactly how our brains work. So nearly every day I'll see a good dozen new reports that come out and other studies that are published, peer-reviewed articles that are published out there. One just came out a couple of days ago. The brain has 10 times as much memory storage as we previously thought. The reason for this is being sold as we want to help those people who have memory issues.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to help people with PTSD. We want to be able to help kids that have autism. These are noble goals.
Right.
But ultimately, this science will be used for military applications.
Right. Deputy Defense Secretary in December made the comment at a public meeting that enhanced human operations are a goal of our enemies. I assume talking about the Russians, Chinese, and perhaps other governments out there. And he said, in his own words, it scares the out of us. So just like the race to get the atomic bomb in the 40s, the race for new weapons to stay ahead of the Russians during the Cold War, this is the new Cold War.
This is the race to become atomic Superman.
Yes, exactly. Humanity 2.0. And because if we don't do it, the Chinese will do it or the Russians will do it first, and then we'll be in trouble.
Well, that's the claim. And
That's the claim.
right now, I know that you are online a lot. We're online a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I would bet that most of our viewers, at least if they're not online a lot, their kids are, whether they know it or not. Because honestly, the studies have come out that a lot of young kids are using their phones online at night.
Yes.
Underneath the covers.
Going to bed with their
yes,
phones. Yeah.
which is terrifying when you think about the contacts that they're making that would be harmful to that child. But it also is where we get into this idea of big data and the Internet of Things. It's not just things, it's the Internet of people.
Mm-hmm.
But the day's coming when we're not going to be considered a whole lot different than any other thing on the internet, because one of the fears, remember a few years ago when a white hat hacker said that he knew how to hack a chip that was in a person's heart,
Right.
and Dick Cheney was concerned about it.
Yes.
He had his replaced.
Right.
What if you can hack
And
a
he
chip
took to
in-
wearing that lead breastplate.
Huh? But what if you could hack someone's brain using the same thing?
Right.
And
Oh.
what if your brain is online at home, so your doctors and everybody can have access to it? You're online at home, your brain chip is online, and the least secure item in your home may be your fridge.
Or your toaster or your coffee maker.
And so
Yep.
if you get into that, you can get into everything.
Yeah.
That is, and actually that was the other story I wanted to talk
I
about
knew
today.
that.
So
That's why I was-
brilliant segue, brilliant. That there's a new report out about a search engine specifically for the Internet of Things. Now, you have to be a paid subscriber to this search engine, and I'm not going to name it because, frankly, I don't want to give them any promotion. But it allows users to search for Internet-connected devices, the Internet of Things. And we're talking about everything from Internet-connected. I keep seeing ads for these things, Wi-Fi-enabled LED light bulbs for your home.
Yeah.
And you can hook them up to your home stereo or your home entertainment system so that when you're watching a really cool movie, the lights will will flash or change in time with the story. Oh, well, that sounds really cool, but they're Wi-Fi enabled. They're going through your network. And what they're finding is that there is such a rush to connect everything to the internet, from your washing machine to your sneakers, that manufacturers, to cut costs, are cutting corners, like security. And these things are leaking information to the internet in clear text. In other words, the things that you need in order to access the internet, your passwords, your email address, are out there. And what's really frightening is that there are some hackers using, not even hackers, just people who subscribe to this particular internet service can use it to search for baby monitors.
I was about
Oh,
to say
yeah.
that very thing, and this is something near and dear to
Yeah.
your heart. Our daughter is in her mid-20s. Your kids are 5 and under.
Yeah. Our son's 2 and our daughter's 4, and we have for my son, we have a video, a wireless video
Many
monitor.
parents do now.
Yeah,
Yes.
and luckily the one that we have isn't hooked up to Wi-Fi, but many of them are.
Yes.
And I mean, there are stories coming out all the time on how easy it is for those to be hacked.
They
'cause
have
you-
a default password
Yeah.
that's the same on all of them.
Exactly, because
Right.
it's one of those things, even though it should be obvious, you don't really think initially that you have to secure that like everything else.
But if the code connecting it to the web doesn't have internal security protocols, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
again, these things are still leaking information. Even though you may think it's secure, it isn't really secure. So while your laptop, and other network-connected computer devices may be secure, from somebody trying to attack them directly, if they can get access to your network through your refrigerator
Yeah.
or your baby monitor, your stuff is all compromised anyway.
Here's another question, and you might have the answer to this, Josh. When we go online, I think most of our viewers are probably familiar with cookies. There are other ways to track you. Cookies is the one that we've all heard of. There's a new thing that's called canvas fingerprinting that is used, another little file that's inserted on your computer or your phone or whatever. Is the day coming when maybe that could be actually, again, chip in your brain? Would they be able to track us inserting little bits of code?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe so. I think the more connected we are for what we might consider convenience, the more control we're giving up eventually. And I mean, it would be great if we had, people in charge that were responsible with these things, but because people are human and flawed, it's really easy to take control over all that stuff. So absolutely, I think that we are headed towards a day and not too far off.
There's a series of slides and presentations that I'm going to share with you later if you haven't already seen it. The Federal Trade Commission just had a big meeting that essentially was looking at the idea of big data and how that can be, frankly, commercialized.
Right.
Because that's what their imperative is. So they had a number of presentations, and that's where I first read about canvas fingerprinting. I'd never heard of that little code bit. But the interesting thing was a number of the presenters were talking about how most people, if you ask them, and again, polling, if you ask the question the right way, you're going to get the answer you want. So I generally don't trust polls. But the overall conclusion drawn was that most people, if there's a benefit to me, then I may not be happy about it, but that's fine. Go ahead and spy on me.
Yep. Yeah, there's this. We're really good at compromising, in our modern world, and it's little bit by little bit. But if you think even 20 years ago, I mean, this would have all looked like science fiction. It would have been ridiculous. No, I don't think anybody knowing all this that's happening would be okay with it. But because it's been little by little by little,
Right.
And so now we look at things like brain chips that might come into play in a few years or longer. Of course, we're not going to be okay with that now, but maybe, with little increments like that, by the time we get there, the vast majority are going to think, well, it's convenient, it's going to help me in my day-to-day life. So
That's how they've sold us on sharing all the information that we share through social media.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
we're volunteering for the Matrix every day.
Yep.
Left turn. There was a story out a couple of days ago about a Caltech study that seems to indicate that there is a 9th true planet. It's not Pluto, but it's a true 9th planet out there. And I've seen online in the fora that are out there, oh, this is Planet X. This is Nibiru. If you've never heard of that, just Google it. You'll see. But what do you think of that?
Well, usually, and it's kind of funny, we were joking before programming, Planet 9 from outer space.
Ed Wood would be so proud.
The worst movie of all time.
Race of Atomic Supermen.
That's one of the lines in that movie.
And that's why it makes it the best.
Well, that'll be the title of this episode then.
Planet 9 from outer space. But yeah, in the normal Planet X or Nibiru mythos or whatever, it's something that has an elliptical orbit and comes close to Earth. This Planet 9, I think that's what they're calling it now, it's so far out there that if they're right, it's not going to really affect us much, if they're right. So, I mean, when it comes to the Planet X stuff, I find it absolutely fascinating. But as I was telling Derek earlier, I don't dive headfirst into things, like that until I get all the research. But, there's a lot of really interesting theories about it. I think it's plausible. But with this, I think it's just exciting that there might be another planet out there. I mean, I'm a space geek, so.
So am I. I think that the world that the Lord has created
Yeah.
is so intricate, diverse. We have barely scratched the surface on understanding it. So for any physicist, especially folks, at CERN and other, high-tech areas, to think, oh, now we found it. Now we know the truth.
Yes.
It's just like with DNA. There are scientists out there that, now epigenetics, now we understand how it works. You said that 50 years ago.
Yeah,
And-
how
and
many
I'm
times
just-
have we been wrong?
Questioning why they're calling it Planet 9, because I thought Pluto had been included
No.
back into the...
Well, I think it's who you ask.
Yeah,
Poor
well,
Pluto.
Yeah.
yeah, you're in, you're out. It's sort of like the unwanted younger brother who always tags around, along with the rest of the planets.
Maybe the planet's name, maybe not Planet 9's name should be Goofy.
That's it.
Sorry, somebody had to say it.
Well, I think the bottom line, though, and we've said before, and we kind of opened the program, is that Christians don't need to be afraid of science.
Exactly.
There's a belief among some in the academic community that science and religion, science and faith just are absolutely, can't mix. As far from east as from west, that is science and religion. And it's never been that way until the last couple hundred years.
Well, what it is it's the interpretation of science and the interpretation of religion that don't mix. You'll have a scientist who will say something like, quantum field theory disproves the afterlife. There can't be an afterlife because there's no quantum field to take information anywhere. That's his interpretation of quantum field theory, which, is an actual science. And, if we're being fair, we as Christians sometimes do that too. I mean, you can take one Bible verse and get 10 or 12 different interpretations of it from all very
Sure.
well-meaning Christians. So, but I think it's mostly the interpretation of each that don't mesh. Because if both are from God, I believe science, true science is from God, as is the Bible and true belief. They should go hand in hand.
Yes.
And that's been the focus of, since I figured that out, science has been just awesome to me. It's been so much fun because
the
there's not
cool-
that added stress.
Amen to that. And those parents out there who are concerned about your kids, your grandkids, who are in school and are being, you're afraid they're being programmed, or if you're homeschooling, and kudos to you if you are, if you're homeschooling and you get to a lesson plan that is just, I cannot wrap my head around this. Just send a little note to Josh, and he'll be happy to help you with that. By the way, do we have a Sci-Friday at SkyWatchTV.com email address?
We don't yet, but we will shortly. So let me add that, Sci-Friday at SkyWatchTV.com.
So if you have a story you want us to talk about, or you have a question for one of us, send us an email.
We'll add that together. Josh, it's wonderful to have you and Christine as part of the team. We're just thrilled to have you here. I know we're just going to have an awful lot of fun.
Absolutely. We're absolutely thrilled too. This is such a change and a welcomed one.
Well, we hope you enjoyed it. Coming up Monday, Tuesday this coming week, we talked to Dr. Michael Heiser about his book, The Unseen Realm, and why understanding the nature of God's supernatural task force, the Divine Council, is so important to understanding the Bible. Have a blessed weekend. For Josh Peck and Sharon Gilbert, I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV. Shields up. It's time for Science! Sci-Friday on SkyWatch TV. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert. Joining us in studio, as always, my best friend, my wife, and our science editor, Sharon
Hi, honey.
Gilbert, and a new addition to the SkyWatch team, and we are just thrilled that he made it here safely. Got here just ahead of the ice storm that hit the Ozarks early.
To where anybody can understand it, and how it might fit in prophetically.
The science background that you bring to these books, when I first became aware of you through the internet, I thought, okay, well, this is just some young guy trying to attract attention to himself. And I was really wrong about that, because when I started reading the books, and it was like, whoa, not that I'm a scientist, but it was clear that you understood the science, and that you were also Well, Josh, you've written a couple of books that we just found absolutely intriguing, and you're working on another one. And that's why we're so happy to bring you in on the Sci-Friday broadcast. Quantum Creation, Cherubim Chariots, which was mind-blowing, and the new forthcoming book. Can we even disclose that yet, or to just hint at it? Or,
Yeah, absolutely. It's not titled yet. I have a working title, but it's probably not gonna stay that. But yeah, it's all about CERN, the LHC. It's explaining the science behind it.
And take this as high praise, in the spirit of Chuck Missler, able to relate it to a biblical worldview, which is so important today, and that's why we do these Sci-Fi broadcasts.
Well, amen to that. And I'm so glad you're here because honestly, he and I sometimes will refer to things in physics, and I always just say, look, I can tell you what I think this article meant, but that wasn't my best subject in college. So,
Freshman physics is where I hit the wall. Earlier this week, Josh Peck. Josh, it's great to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here. It's an absolute pleasure and honor for me, and I don't think it's fully sunk in yet, but Christina and I are just thrilled. So thank you so much.
Well, as soon as we start you working and, shoveling out the parking lot out front.
Hey, I'll do it.
That's right. They didn't tell you that's the new guy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Lots of things.
Tom might have missed that in the job description.
You have to clean the windows at our house.
Right. It's understandable.
Yeah.